Direct News TV. December 24, 2023. Israel-Hamas war live, 166 Palestinians killed in last 24 hours. Health Ministry in Gaza says 166 Palestinians killed, 384 wounded in Israeli attacks in last 24 hours. UNRWA says it cannot deliver meaningful aid under intense Israeli bombardments of Gaza after the UN Security Council called for increased access. Stop the genocide now, says Bethlehem pastor Munir Isaac, as churches across Palestine cancel Christmas celebrations. The government media office in Gaza says 103 journalists have now been killed since October 7. More than 20,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks since October 7. The revised death toll from Hamas's attack on Israel stands at 1,139. Egypt the big loser in Red Sea disruption with transit fee losses. David Des Roches, from the National Defense University in Washington, D.C., says a U.S.-led maritime coalition will eventually help stabilize Red Sea shipping despite recent Houthi attacks. By having an organized system of naval escorts, commercial carriers will be able to travel the Suez Canal, link up with the coalition, and then sail through the Bab al-Mandeb under international protection, Des Roches told Al Jazeera. I expect it to take some time before a level of confidence is established. Bear in mind that these are unarmed commercial ships that are being attacked with weapons of war in time of peace. That is a war crime. They're flagged by nations that have no connection with the Gaza conflict at all. The big loser here is Egypt. It's going to lose 30% of its hard currency assets from Suez Canal transit fees as long as this is closed, he noted. Gaza Civil Defense, we lost 40 members of our crews due to Israeli targeting. Mahmoud Basil, the Gaza Civil Defense spokesman, has told Al Jazeera the following. Our work is now primitive due to the absence of heavy equipment and machinery. A large number of people killed are under the rubble of targeted buildings in the north. Israeli army vehicles ran over several Palestinian bodies. A large number of Palestinians killed had their bodies decomposed due to the difficulty of reaching them. Jabalia is subjected to a real genocide by the Israeli occupation. Israeli forces have dredged wells in several areas and we appeal to the world to intervene. The number of civil defense members killed has risen to 40 since the start of the aggression. The Israeli occupation prevents us from extricating living people from buildings by targeting us. We monitored many operations of Palestinians being run over by Israeli army vehicles in Tal al-Hawa area in Gaza City. War exacts a very heavy price from us, PM Netanyahu. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described a difficult morning after 14 Israeli soldiers were reported killed in recent days during the fighting in Gaza. Our hearts go out to the families and our sympathy goes out to the young lives that were torn from the prime of their lives, Netanyahu said. Let's be very clear, this will be a long war. The soldiers were killed during clashes with fighters on Friday and Saturday. The 14 Israeli soldiers died in central and southern Gaza, a sign of how Palestinian armed groups still put up tough resistance even as Israel claims to have dealt them a serious blow. Israel has lost at least 486 soldiers in total, about one-third since the start of its ground offensive in Gaza on October 27. The war exacts a very heavy price from us but we have no choice but to continue fighting, Netanyahu told a cabinet meeting. U.S. missile targeting Yemen's naval forces explodes near ship, Houthis. A missile fired from a U.S. battleship targeting Yemen's naval forces in the Red Sea exploded near a Gabon-owned commercial vessel, Yemen's Houthi group says. The Gabon-owned ship was traveling from Russia, spokesman Mohammed Abdul Salam said. The Red Sea will be a burning arena if the U.S. and its allies continue their bullying. Countries bordering the Red Sea must realize the reality of the dangers that threaten their national security, said Abdul Salam. The leader of the Houthis, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, warned on Wednesday the armed group would strike U.S. warships if the militia is targeted by a U.S.-led multinational force in the Red Sea. Qassam brigades, Israeli soldiers targeted in Jabalia, Johor ad-Dik. The armed wing of Hamas says its fighters have sniped 3 Israeli soldiers, one of whom was a major, in Al-Qasaisib neighborhood in the Jabalia refugee camp. The attacks come during the intensification of Israeli artillery and air bombardment on Jabalia. Elsewhere, the Qassam brigades also said it targeted 10 Israeli soldiers inside a building in the central region of Johor ad-Dik with a rocket-propelled grenade, adding they were killed and wounded. UNRWA, 142 staff members killed so far. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, announced that 142 employees in Gaza have been killed since the start of Israel's war on the enclave on October 7. Listen, can the UN do anything to stop Israel's war on Gaza? As Israel's war on Gaza continues, questions grow about the power of the UN in stopping the war. The United Nations Security Council passed a resolution on more aid for Gaza after several days of delays and weakened language that did not call for a ceasefire in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, prompting a backlash with some describing it as woefully insufficient and nearly meaningless. The resolution merely called for steps to create the conditions for a sustainable cessation of hostilities, and was adopted on Friday with 13 votes in favor, none against, and the United States and Russia abstaining. Hospital Director, injuries potentially caused by internationally banned weapons. Nahid Abu Tayma, director of Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis, told Al Jazeera that doctors are trying to treat severe and critical injuries caused by Israel's use of weapons that may be internationally prohibited. He also stressed medical personnel and ambulances are unable to provide their services in Gaza. Human Rights Watch says the Israeli military recently used white phosphorus munitions in Lebanon and Gaza. Israel's military has denied the accusation. Unbearable scenes as hospitals struggle to treat the wounded. Of Gaza's original 36 hospitals, only 9 are now partially functional, all of them in the south and all overwhelmed. Hospitals, protected under international humanitarian law, have repeatedly been hit by Israeli strikes since the war erupted. Whose staff described unbearable scenes of largely abandoned patients, including young children, begging for food and water after missions last week to 2 badly damaged hospitals in the north, Al-Shifa and Al-Ali. As of December 20, WHO registered 246 attacks on healthcare infrastructure in Gaza, including hospitals and ambulances, resulting in 582 deaths and 748 injuries. Most of those employees were killed along with their families, the UN Refugee Agency said. Decimation of Gaza's health system not stopping health workers. The health system in Gaza is being destroyed, but medical professionals continue to bravely carry out their duties, the head of the World Health Organization says. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus hailed Gaza's medical workers who continue their work under increasingly dire circumstances. The decimation of the Gaza health system is a tragedy, he posted on X. We persist in calling for #ceasefire now. The UN Health Agency has long been sounding the alarm about the state of healthcare since the bloodiest ever war in Gaza erupted in October. In the face of constant insecurity and inflows of wounded patients, we see doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers and more continue striving to save lives, Tedros said. Palestinian Islamic Jihad delegation in Cairo for talks. A delegation from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, movement arrived in Cairo for talks with Egyptian security officials. An unnamed member of the group with knowledge of the talks told the Reuters news agency discussions will center on ways to end the Israeli aggression on our people. The armed group allied with Hamas is known to be holding some Israeli captives in Gaza. Both Hamas and PIJ have so far rejected any new prisoner swap deals with Israel until it ends the attack on Gaza. Israel bombs towns in southern Lebanon. Israeli artillery shelling has hit around the towns of Maroun al-Ras and Yaroun in southern Lebanon. Earlier, the Israeli army asked residents of the border town of Lyman in western Galilee to evacuate. Delivery of aid in Gaza faces difficulties. The amount of aid arriving is still small, despite the resolution by the UN Security Council to allow an increased amount of humanitarian aid into Gaza. However, what we're seeing is a surge in air attacks, systematic killing and displacement in the enclave. The aid is not going to be enough as long as more and more people get displaced. As people leave their homes and all their belongings behind, it will further place a burden on people who are working to coordinate the delivery of humanitarian aid. Logistically, it is becoming impossible to deliver aid considering the entire Gaza Strip has been effectively divided. Thousands march in Rabat demanding end to Morocco-Israel ties. One of the largest pro-Palestinian marches has taken place in Rabat since the outbreak of the war in Gaza, demanding an end to Morocco's ties with Israel. Some 10,000 protesters waved Palestinian flags and held placards reading, "Resistance till victory, stop Moroccan government normalization with Israel," and "Free Palestine." Protesters also called for a boycott of brands they accuse of supporting Israel. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.